28th. We'll start out with roll call. Alder Johnson.
Here.
Alder Hinkvis.
Here.
Alder Grant.
Here.
All right, all are here and accounted for. I'll entertain a motion on the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I'll entertain a motion on the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. On to regular business,
So
item
moved.
E1, for consideration with possible action on request to fill the following positions and all subsequent vacancies resulting from internal transfers. Deputy Clerk,
So moved.
Second.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Item 2, for consideration with possible action on request to increase the number of annual personnel days for fire department battalion chiefs and assistant chiefs from 3 days to 4. Any questions for staff?
Maybe one. I mean, you know, in the content, it said that, I can't remember if it was totally baked into the ordinance, right? But that whenever an adjustment is made to the contract, to the labor contract, right, the non-represented employees, their benefits get modified to reflect what's in the contract? Is that essentially the essence?
No, I think the essence is the opposite of that, that after a certain date,
Okay.
I read the same thing you did.
employees don't receive the same benefit unless the personnel committee approves it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have to approve it, right? But that's why you're making the recommendation.
Yeah, we're making the recommendation because the contract was changed for the union members. So now these battalion chiefs and commanders or assistant chiefs, they're requesting it because historically, they've gotten the same benefits.
Correct.
But as per our personnel policy, we need the personnel committee to approve it. That's why we're here. It does not automatically occur.
I have a question then. When we redo the contracts for the battalion chiefs and assistant battalion chiefs, do we negotiate with them?
We don't have a contract with them.
No.
Okay, do we negotiate with them for their positions?
No.
What do you mean by that?
Well, and this is going back, but police supervisors
Yep.
were a meet and confer.
Yep.
Is that the same thing with the battalion chiefs?
No. Yeah, they're just administrative. So the police lieutenants have a contract that's being confer. And I believe the last contract, we made a similar change to give the police lieutenants and captains an additional personal day that the police officers got. So that was kind of why we have the same request for the fire department. So we do not have a meet and confer with the battalion chiefs in the fire department.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments, concerns?
Yeah, I'm probably going to talk to you about this separately, Joe, because it's really not related to this particular item, but just more of a philosophical discussion. I'll chat with you offline, because I think Bill's kind of getting at the point, you know, which is when you negotiate in a contract and you add something, it's usually because you're getting something, and right, and that scenario doesn't exist here. You're just kind of giving something. So it's I just want to make sure, you know, that of course our staff are properly compensated, have the right benefits, and I'm not sure that just well, you have it, so you get it, is like the right strategy. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, I understand that, and I think that's the reason why our personnel policy reads the way it does, to have that discussion that we're talking about right now.
Okay.
I think the last time the police union had a similar situation where the union got an extra personal day, we then gave it to the captains and lieutenants. I think it was justified then. I think this situation is very similar to that one, to approve it this time. But I think going forward, it's a discussion we're going to have more in detail, whether or not we should, you know, have those same requests or continue with it.
yeah, I think just for us, right, to understand the benefits we're offering, we always want to make sure they're competitive. We just went through the compensation study. That was great. Helped us understand that. You know, we want to make sure our benefits are where they need to be as well. That's why I say I don't want it necessarily to be about this, and why it's more appropriate offline probably, but and then just making sure, right, that we understand what that cost exposure is to the city for all those things, because we just also added an additional paid holiday for Martin Luther King Jr. Day, right? Then for a number of our contracts, we've added an additional personal day. So,
Yeah, the cost in this situation is less than $6,500.
yeah, and that's why I say I don't want it to be about this one,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and I guess the only thing that I would say is, are there other benefits that leadership is entitled to that staff is not? And when we start talking about personal days, does it work?
I guess we're not aware in the fire department specifically if they have anything different. I would have to check across the board for, general employees compared to union employees.
Okay, make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. On to item 3, for consideration with possible action on a request to approve the 2025 labor agreement between the City of Green Bay and the Green Bay Professional Police Association.
Yeah, I got some questions.
Chief, you have anything to say about this, or does anybody from the association have anything to say?
I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I think this agreement, it represents the culmination of a really, I think, a very collaborative process that everybody on both sides of the table came together to create. I think it represents a very good deal for both the city and our police officers who go out and do, obviously a very important job for our community every day. So I think I speak for the whole bargaining team, at least on the city side, when I strongly and enthusiastically recommend approval.
Any questions?
Wait, yeah, I got a few
Alderman
questions.
Hinkles?
So in this new contract, we're basically adding 2 additional unpaid days.
Yeah, no, we're adding.
Well, you're adding a personal day and Martin Luther King, correct?
And we're doing away with a floating holiday.
That's right, that's
That
right.
was,
St. Patrick's Day is gone?
it's gone.
So then we're adding 1 more day. And how many police officers do we have?
157, give or take on the day. 155, 154, 157.
Okay, so we're
It's
adding,
currently, like, currently staffed. Right? Do you know the table or Mrs. Corch, or would be-
Probably 189.
Yeah, 189.
No, but covered by this agreement, about 160-ish.
so 160 additional days off is what we're basically giving annually, if you look at it from that perspective,
Yes.
which,
Except I think the holiday's already been,
yeah, that's a 0. I'm just talking
Yeah.
about the 1, because, and the only reason that I bring this up, and this goes back to when we had our audit and things, every time we add, and we don't have a cap on how much overtime or how much vacation and personal, that ends up going into what we're gonna pay out in the future. So we're carrying a lot of vacation over, we're carrying a lot of personal days over, and every time you do that for every single person. So it's, to the city, it's a long-term cost that, I don't know if you guys remember, but it hits us. Diana, do you have any?
I would agree. I mean, it's like you said, you're not seeing the immediate cost up front. You're gonna say, well, it doesn't really cost as much, you're not really paying anything additional. But they tend to increase accruals, and like you said, it's 1 year per year, and over a handful of years that does accumulate, and then typically they'll get those paid out. Because I don't think I don't think the police has a separate budget of personnel versus, personal versus, I think they all go into one bucket, if I'm not mistaken.
And I guess maybe I'll just jump in with this and that. What the chief was talking about, this was negotiated between, the city and the union, and it's a whole package deal. So there's more things in here that kind of went back and forth, that the reason why we gave up the Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So it's not, I get it, if you look at it just on its own, it's adding a day, but there's also other things that are back and forth. That's why it's negotiated, and that's why we support it.
I'm just looking at the long-term effects that it has at the end, and the overall, debt that we, the city, are responsible for years and years and years down the road. So I'm just bringing that up. And then there was something that you changed in the contract regarding overtime and compensatory time, where it's, it 1.5 times, so paid and a half, which totally makes sense, but why are we limiting it to just 1.5? Because there are times they get paid double time, right? Is double time not eligible
only
for the
times-
compensatory?
Well, the main time when people get paid double time is for Green Bay Packer games, and those are paid for by the Packers, so those aren't comp time. So what this agreement anticipates is that members will have the option, if they work normal overtime, non-Packer overtime, to elect to either be compensated in comp time, which is like time they can take off later, or pay. There isn't that option for double time for Packer events.
Okay.
We would only ever want to have them accrue it at time and a half.
Okay, because there was nothing in there before, so I was just wondering if there's a change in how we were administering it, or?
There were some changes to, and this benefits the city, to how often members can cash out comp time, and some clarification to limits on accrual of comp time and some of those things.
Okay. I was just very curious, because it wasn't in your,
I think we're
I
looking
think
at.
that might be a different agenda item.
I think it's the first page, 6.2. There should be 2. That's what I think you're looking at.
The other thing, there was 2 days, or there's 2 events at the Packers Stadium that, I don't know, right now you're paid time and a half, you want, and you think they should be paid double, which I don't disagree with. My question to you is, do they, whoever is there, are they the ones paying for that? So if the Packers put on Billy Joel, I'm assuming that's kind of what you're thinking, right?
Without getting too far into the details of some other negotiations that impacts, that is an open question, and so to cover that in the estimated cost for this, we budgeted for a contingency in which the Packers, who normally would pay for that for Packer events, for some reason it came to pass that they did not pay for those.
Okay. So then, again, the city would pay for it.
If it came to pass that the Packers somehow did not pay for those.
Okay. Okay.
I guess I'd just like to add that, adding on that extra off day, and again, you're right. A new officer starting out, if he is allowed to save his time, that could add up to 30 days. But there is a cap on how many days they can carry into retirement. As we're looking to attract, and we're having so much difficulty attracting good officers, good applicants, part of that benefit package is the ability to create their own health insurance escrow account. That's all that money can be used for, is to pay the premium on a health insurance escrow account after they've retired.
No, I thought you could cash out. None of your PTO?
Nope.
Is that kind of terminated with Act 10?
No, I thought if you retire and you have vacation, you can have that paid out, correct?
Just to clarify one thing, personal days cannot be carried over. They have to be used in the calendar year, so there is no the concern of that extra day being calculated and it's saved for 25 years. It has to be used every year.
Right, but then you don't use a vacation day.
Right. Oh,
So, I mean, I understand.
As far as I know, I was never offered an opportunity to cash out. Once upon a time, they were allowed to do that, but
We'd have to check with payroll and get back to you, because I think the only thing that can be used for health escrow is
vacation.
accrued sick leave that you don't use. I think the vacation pay gets paid out at the end.
You have the option.
You have the option.
At the end of retirement, you have the option of either being paid out on for vacation or roll it into sick escrow, or you could split it. But yes, sick must go into sick escrow if you still have that benefit, and then vacation has options.
But
You know,
the net effect on the city is the same. We're writing a check for that amount of money, whether it's going into a health escrow or.
that is correct.
Yeah. And I just want to make sure that, I mean, that to me just feels like a totally different agenda, topic, and discussion. I think if we want to talk about that exposure to the city, feel free to, I would say, bring that back as a future agenda item. I think it's a good one. But I don't know that it that topic really influences to me the way that I would vote on this agreement. And I think if we've got an agreement that both parties have agreed to, there's nothing in here that sticks out to me as being the crazy ask, right? Like this all seems to be in reason. So like I support this, the chief supports it, the union supports it. I know how hard it is to get to these agreements and how hard you guys work to do that. And then invite or encourage the committee to really maybe ask Diana or Joe or whoever else to come back with some information on the other stuff.
No, I agree. I'm all forward. Part of this is for me learning too, as it goes through and what I'm approving. This is really my first time going through, this type of negotiation, so.
Well, I would just say at the high level, for council, one of your challenges now and into the future will continue to be police recruiting. All kinds of reasons why that is, but we have that challenge in the city where we try to fully staff our positions. And so I know that's certainly one of the things on our minds when we go into these discussions is, and I look at that as a benefit that we are trying to get for the city is to make us a competitive employer to recruit these very rare people who are willing to do this work and who are qualified to. And the cost of that is going up.
I think that's the advantage of doing these every few years, right? It gives you the ability to react to market conditions and request new things.
And one of the things that we hear from younger employees is they're a lot less interested in overtime income than they are in paid time off.
Right. And that makes total sense. I mean, I think I am in support of the contract, but as I was looking through it, there were questions that I have, and I think we need to do whatever we have to do to, support and recruit the right top talent. So,
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
motion to approve? Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
How about you
Shows
two?
you.
How do you guys feel about it? Aye or nay?
Aye.
All right, any nays? All right, that passes unanimously. All right, on to item 4, for consideration with possible action on a request to approve the 2025 labor agreement between the City of Green Bay and the Green Bay Police Supervisory Personnel. Any questions for staff? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Item number 5, consideration with possible action on the grievance filed by the Green Bay Professional Police Association regarding overtime pay for working the Republican National Convention. We can go into closed session.
I think it would help maybe, like I've been through this, but maybe others
Yeah.
haven't, in understanding why Personnel Committee is handling the grievance, right? So I think some background on that would be
Yeah,
helpful.
that would be good.
You want to answer that or you want me to answer that?
Uh,
I mean, it's a very simple answer. The
Yeah.
Personnel Committee is handling this because the collective bargaining agreement has a grievance process, and the Personnel Committee is the third step. And then so this is the final step from the city's perspective. It doesn't go to the Common Council. The next step would go to an arbitrator or arbitration.
So the process is handled as a quasi-judicial hearing, which we've all been through before. It's just at the personnel committee level.
Okay.
So before going into closed session, Alder Galvin, as the chair, if you want to just go through just ensuring that there aren't any conflicts, and then we can go through the process of determining whether the committee wants to hear or have a fact-finding hearing, or if the committee would rather just hear arguments from the parties and then go into deliberation.
All right, so I'm going to read this. This is for the committee. We are now on item 5, consideration with possible action on the grievance filed by the Green Bay Professional Police Association regarding overtime pay for working of the Republican National Convention. This grievance is before the Personnel Committee meeting at this time upon the mutual agreement of the parties for extensions of time rather than at the meeting that was first available after filing. This is a quasi-judicial matter. It is the goal of the Personnel Committee to provide and conduct a hearing that is fair in form, appearance, and substance. To ensure that this hearing satisfied these goals, each member of the Personnel Committee please confirm the following by stating, "I confirm." Number 1, I do not have an interest or conflict of interest in this matter. Alder Johnson,
I confirm.
Alder Hankfus,
I confirm.
Alder Grant,
I confirm.
and I also confirm. Number 2, I have not received any communication from any person or party about this matter. Alder Johnson,
I confirm.
Alder Hinkles,
I confirm.
Alder Grant,
I confirm.
I also confirm that. A decision will be made based upon the labor agreement between the City of Green Bay and the Green Bay Professional Police Association in effect as of the date of the event complained of. The Personnel Committee will either announce its decision tonight or take the matter under advisement and have a decision at the next committee meeting. The Personnel Committee will make findings of fact and conclusions of law based upon the record before it. At this time, the following materials have been submitted into the record. Number 1, the Green Bay Professional Police Association Contract Violation Information Form for grievance number 24-001 dated November 25th, 2024. Item 2, interdepartmental correspondence from the Chief of Police Officer Mike Engelbrett as representative for the Green Bay Professional Police Association as Step 1 response to grievance number 24-001 dated September 17th, 2024. Item 3 is Step 2 grievance response for grievance number 24001 from Chief of Operations Joseph Falls, dated November 11th, 2024. Number 4, a reply from Attorney Jonathan Cermelli to the Step 2 grievance response for grievance number 24-001, dated November 21st, 2024. And number 5, City of Green Bay position statement submitted by Attorney Jeffrey Lacey in opposition to grievance number 24-001. Pursuant to Section 3.8.3 of the Labor Agreement, the committee may decide whether to hold a fact-finding hearing. Is either party requesting a hearing at this time? City?
We are not.
WPPA is not?
The police association is not requesting a fact-finding hearing.
Okay. And the city?
And the city is not.
Yeah, we're not.
Okay.
Too many lawyers.
Okay, so do the parties wish to make arguments to ensure that this hearing proceeds in an orderly fashion?
I guess from my perspective, if the committee has questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, the facts are pretty straightforward. I think the question really is, is there a violation that's been alleged and established by the association? So happy to answer any questions, but or I certainly can walk through our position, but in respect of everybody's time, whatever I think is best for the committee, we'd be happy to do. I don't want to go to the association.
Yeah, but I
Does everybody know who Mr. Lacey is?
Sorry. Attorney Jeff Lacey, running Lewis and Lacey, representing the city on this particular grievance.
Do we want to go into closed session or not?
Did we hear from the association?
Yeah, does
Okay.
the association have a position on whether you'd like to present arguments?
Phil Scanlon with the Police Association, we did not intend to or prepare a oral argument for this grievance. We believe that the documents submitted to you are sufficient to explain our position on this, and thank you for your time and consideration.
So at this point, the committee, if you wish to go to closed session, we can do so at this point and deliberate. Otherwise, if you have any questions, we would advise maybe perhaps those questions would be asked now in open session, and then we can follow going into deliberation. Otherwise, if you don't have any questions, we can go into closed session.
Does anyone have any questions?
I think to Mr. Scanlon's point, it's laid out pretty well.
I do have a question.
Well,
Sorry.
right, I guess I was wrong.
So close.
As
I tried, guys, I tried.
As I understand this, and correct me if I'm wrong, the department was preparing to go to the RNC. Officers had taken time off. They were told they could not take time off if they were going to attend or be participating in the event.
Sort of. I guess I would clarify that just to say that the invitation from Milwaukee Police Department to send 3 of the Green Bay Police Department units was made to the chief. The chief communicated with the association and said this is the request that we've been given, and is everybody interested? Number one, we have to have a critical mass of the teams to make it makes sense. And number two, they're gonna be down there for initially a 4-day stint, 3-day stint, like 14th to the 18th. And 12-hour shifts. Union said, we'd like to do that. Membership of those teams said they'd like to do that. MPD was contacted, said, we'll provide the assistance. It was the Marine unit, the mobile response team, and then the motorcycle unit. After that was done, and I can't give you the exact numbers of who had already scheduled PTO and who scheduled it after the decision to offer the Green Bay Police Department services, but some combination of the two.
Sure.
And in response to that, the chief made contact to the city of Milwaukee. This is all grant funded, all through the RNC. So the city was going to be fully reimbursed for the expense of sending our officers down there. But wasn't able to confirm that when the union said, if we have to go work while we have scheduled PTO, it's time and a half on those hours. They're already working overtime, but time and a half on the 8 hours. Weren't able to confirm that that would be reimbursed to the city.
Sure.
And so went back to the union and said, look, this has to be revenue neutral to the city of Green Bay, because these are our resources to police our city. We're happy to, glad that we can provide mutual aid down to MPD, but we're not paying any money to do that. So if officers want to continue to do that, they're going to have to make the decision to cancel their PTO. And if everybody decides that that's what they want to do, then we'll proceed and go forward. Otherwise, we'll tell MPD that we're not able to provide the assistance that they've requested. The officers involved canceled their PTO and then ultimately went down and provided the assistance to MPD at the RNC, and then subsequently agreed and said they should be paid time and a half because they had scheduled PTO when they worked. Our position is this was all discussed beforehand, and in fact, when you went down to work, you did not have scheduled PTO because you had decided voluntarily to cancel that PTO after having explained that we weren't going to do this if it was going to cost the city an additional $30,000, $25,000, whatever it was, $30,000 roughly for that additional overtime. The chief had full authority to decide whether or not to provide that assistance or not, and full authority to withdraw the decision to provide that assistance, and instead went to the union and said, here are the parameters under which we can do this. What do you guys want to do? And the officers withdrew their canceled their PTO in the telestaff system and went down. The only exception to that was that after all this was done, the city of Milwaukee said, well, actually we need you coming Saturday instead of Sunday and working, for the full RNC. Excuse me. And there was one or two officers, one officer for sure, who had scheduled PTO on Saturday, which was not part of the original deployment. And then because the officers had to be there the entire time or not at all, that officer had to work during a period where he did have PTO scheduled, and that was treated as it typically is and as overtime.
What about officers on their days off?
What's that?
Officers on their days off?
were paid overtime, or officers were paid overtime in accordance with the contract if they were there on their days off, or if they were there for more than 8.5 hours in a day.
And were
Which
they-
was every day. It was a 12-hour.
And who covered that?
The city of Milwaukee reimbursed all of that.
Okay.
And this was volunteer, correct? This was
That's our position. I don't know. I don't want to speak for the association on that, but that's our position, that the conversation was laid out, that because we couldn't confirm, and I don't know that there's a definitive answer as to whether the city of Milwaukee grant would have reimbursed had they paid that overtime, but the fact of the matter is we weren't able to confirm that beforehand, and so that was when the conversation with the association was, look, this is the deal. We can do this or we cannot do this, but these are the circumstances, and then they made the decision. Admittedly, some of them, grumbling about, withdrawing their scheduled PTO, but everybody did that on their own, of their own volition. And we're not forced to. We're told, if you want to keep your PTO and take the days off, then you're free to do so. subject to ultimately, in terms of the deployment, whether or not there was sufficient enough officers to send down. But nobody was forced to cancel their PTO. If they wanted to keep it, they would have been permitted to keep it. And I think we had one officer who did keep it, or was that the Saturday?
There was at least one officer who ended up not going down there because it didn't work for him.
Yeah, some family commitment or something.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Phil, do you have anything you want to reply to that?
I did not prepare to argue.
I understand.
I will respond. I guess he made a long statement that I think is pretty consistent with this document. I think our document is pretty plain and straightforward. I will point out with this distinction about voluntary and involuntary, is all overtime that we do for our work is voluntary, unless we're ordered to work. I think that's the distinction. I'd also like to point out a distinction with respect to that. I'm sorry, I didn't plan on giving a speech, so if you have any questions, particularly about the specifics, I'd be happy to answer them, but I mean, I think our document is pretty sufficient. It explains that off time is not, in our contract, does not distinguish between vacation, personal time, and off time. I'd like you to focus on the fact that we had officers in this department on their off time receiving overtime, and other officers, particularly senior officers, were not allowed to earn the same overtime on vacation. And our contract does not draw a distinction between the two. Off time is off time, on time is on time, unless you're sick. And I will say that, in closing, that this is not only we believe the contract supports this position, but also I think this is one of the rare occasions we have an unequivocal past practice. There is not a ranking supervisor, probably captain or below, that will tell you that we take off vacation all the time to work overtime assignments, be Packer games, 4th of July events, work all the time. The decision to use vacation versus regular off day is a completely novel idea with our contract. It doesn't, we believe our contract don't support it, and it is an unbargained change in our contract, and that's our position.
Well, I have a question for you. When an officer in the city of Green Bay takes vacation knowing that there's a Packer game coming up, and that double time is paid for by the Packers, or if they take off time knowing that the 4th of July is coming up, and that is compensated by the city. All right? Here, to me, the only thing I'm finding that's not the same is this is the city of Green Bay officers going to another entity. They're not working for the city of Green Bay, they're not working for the Green Bay Packers. They're working for another entity that has told the city, and from what the chief says, this was related to the bargaining unit, that the city would not be compensated for that time. And that if they want to go, they need to cancel their off time or PTO time, whatever they did to take off. Because I know that has happened in the past, yeah. Officers take off to work overtime in the city. I guess my concern here, or what I'm wondering is, how is it, did you grieve this before you went down, or did you wait till after to grieve it?
The decision to send us was about 2 days before, the final decision to send us was about 2 days prior to that we traveled. There was some conversations back and forth that preceded that. No, there's no grievance filed before. We chose to file afterwards.
Well, there were concerns raised from the union beforehand.
Okay.
And, the clock was ticking whether we were going to go or not. And so we offered people the opportunity to cancel their vacation. I think almost all of them did. But we agreed in kind of ongoing discussions with the association, we'd keep track of like 2 sets of books. What it would have looked like if people had been allowed to take vacation while they went down there, and then what it would look like if they weren't on vacation when they were down there. And have some further discussions. And, we were still unclear as to, at that point, about like what specific article of the contract it violated, if Milwaukee was going to reimburse this, which, that's immaterial to what's in the contract. But like, we were working on the problem, but we had to draw the line somewhere and commit to sending people down there. So it's not so much that they didn't file a grievance beforehand, like, we were still working on the difference of
Okay.
opinions until afterwards, and we both agreed that a grievance could come afterwards, and then we could work it out after the fact that way. So, you see what I'm saying? So it's not like nobody in the union raised any concern
Okay.
before this happened. Is that
Yeah,
That's correct.
telling the truth?
Can I just, one clarification
Sure.
on what Officer Scanlon said? The question of voluntary is not about the deployment itself, but the decision, or the sort of discussion, the proposal, if you will, that if we're gonna do this, you guys have to make decisions about whether you're willing to voluntarily cancel your paid time off, whatever it is, if it's vacation, if it's, time off, that there's about 6 different varieties of it in the contract. Doesn't make any difference. The point is, that's the voluntary piece, that this is the construct of the deployment, and if you want to do it, you got to make a decision to cancel your time off, and the officers chose to do so. Yeah, I think the timing of the grievance, to me, is not a problem, not an issue. But to another thing that the chief pointed out, we've asked, I think, since the beginning, you say Article 6. Article 6 is a 4-page article that includes a lot of different types of stuff. You're talking about it with compensatory time off. We've never been told exactly, where exactly in Article 6 do you feel like there's been a violation? Because the fact of the matter is, none of those officers were in Milwaukee working the RNC when they had scheduled paid time off. They had canceled it prior to that. So, anyway.
I guess my question to that would be though, when the city tells them, if you're gonna insist on not canceling your off time, you're not going down to Milwaukee, is that true?
Yeah, I mean, the whole construct was that this has to be a decision, a collective decision of those teams, because we gotta have, like I said, the critical mass of the teams.
Right. You can't have them going down in 1s and 2s, it's the whole group or not the whole group, but isn't
Correct.
that kind of the 1 in the hand, 2 in the bush? You got a chance to make some overtime, or you got a chance to make a lot of overtime.
Mhm.
If you want to at least guarantee you're gonna get some overtime, you do the 1 in the hand.
Which, all of it was guaranteed minimum of 4 hours a day of overtime, because they were 12-hour shifts. And in our contract, after 8.5, so I guess 3.5 hours of guaranteed overtime. And then other, working during your off time. So there were other, components within the contract that do provide overtime that we're adhered to. But, from our position, this particular aspect is not required in the contract and was set up in consultation with the association in terms of exactly what we are willing to afford, I guess, in terms of resources, and not expending City of Green Bay resources to provide aid to the RNC that was compensated through a grant fund. If that makes sense.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I remember when we sent the bicycle units and the Marine unit and everything down to Milwaukee, and I was really proud because I believe our police here in Green Bay are absolutely fabulous. But as a taxpayer, if we start policing multiple different areas, we can't charge that back to the city. I mean, for me to tell my constituents that we have to pay more because we cover the RNC, I'm not sure what the reaction, I don't think it would be good. So I guess, to me, what is the policy on things outside? Or is this the first time this has ever come up?
Well, and I think that's the section 6, right? And I think we can't get into an opinion of whether we want that to happen or not. It's, does the contract
Say it
require
happens.
it or not?
It doesn't matter how we feel, it's what the contract says must happen.
But I do think it matters what was discussed
What was agreed to.
beforehand, which was made clear that this had to be cost neutral to the city of Green Bay. And we're here because we're not able to confirm with the city of Milwaukee who controlled the grant, that this version of additional compensation for our officers would be reimbursed through that fund. So unable to confirm that an additional $30,000 roughly, and I don't quote me on that
Right.
figure, but you know, was going to come out of the city of Green Bay coffers, the GBPD budget. You know, that was discussed beforehand, that wasn't going to be the circumstance under which the chief was going to continue with that deployment, which is 100% his authority to do or not do. So that's part of why we're saying, look, we had these discussions beforehand. You made the decision to cancel the PTO so that, and I'm just using PTO generally speaking.
Sure.
So that we could continue because the officers did want to. Like you said, that's the type of team that they are. That's good. But under the circumstances that were laid out ahead of time. So, and again, we don't see anything in Article 6 that specifies overtime for this particular purpose.
Detective Scanlon?
So there was a lot there. Most of it I would agree with in general. I will say that 6.3.1 does address specifically overtime with respect to your on or off day. And Attorney Lacey is correct that the chief has sole authority to decide to deploy us to this mission or not. But I will say, based on the contract, the chief does not have the authority to send an officer that's junior to me on an assignment while on an off day and while I'm on vacation and tell me that I cannot attend on vacation. The contract does not distinguish between an off day and a vacation day. It's an off day or an on day. So if the chief would have chose to send none of us, or only to send all of us on our work days, I don't know that the association would have to have a really good grievance. I'd have to talk to our lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. But I will tell you that the chief does not have the authority, I believe, based on our contract, to send one officer that's junior on an off day and to decline a senior officer while on vacation. So I would like that, and that is in Article 6.3.1 that says overtime for those qualified is administered by seniority regardless of your on or off day. And that's been the common practice in our department since I got hired in 1999.
Would there have been, if the chief had just said, I'm only going to send people working on their work days, nobody on their off days, would we have had enough people to send a team that would have mattered down there? Like it was said, we can't send part of a team down. We need a team that's going to be a solid team to go down and help.
I would agree with the chief that it would have been difficult to staff probably, I don't know what the motorcycle unit's a small unit, but it would have been difficult to staff probably the bicycle unit or the marine unit with officers only on their off day. And I understand the attorney's position on Milwaukee's decision to pay us and having it come back on the taxpayers as citizens. We respectfully disagree with that analysis, but that they might not have paid us. We respectfully disagree with this. We don't necessarily agree with that. We wouldn't have gotten compensated for it. But that, I guess, is an argument for another time. But it is when an employee makes a decision to take on such a task, like in Milwaukee with the volatile times and politics and things we're doing, employees were asked a decision. Do you want to attend this? How do you want to attend it? Are you on off day, on day? Those are all individual things, and while they're important, what matters is our labor agreement, and I would like you to reference 6.3.1, which does not allow the city to distinguish between an on day and an off day when allocating overtime.
Just one quick point to that.
Sure.
6.3.1 does not apply in this situation because these are specialty unit deployments. They were specifically 3 specialty units, and those deployments and how they're scheduled and the flex hour requirements are not covered in 6.3.1. So this is part of the complication that we have. It's not posted overtime for, to fill patrol. Then I'd agree with Officer Scanlon 100%. These are specialty unit deployments, very different scenario, which is why the discussion was had beforehand. These are the teams that we're sending their team deployments. This is not a question of filling overtime on a posting and seniority basis.
All right. And I can't find anything here that actually shows me 6.3.1.
Well, how terribly convenient that we see their contract once every 3 years and it's in our packets.
Has that been changed over?
Do you have copies of it?
I do.
Yeah, I haven't.
It's on the previous agenda.
There
You have
have
the red line
been
and
any
the-
substantive changes.
If
you wanna take
I
a-
can look
you
and
wanna take a
see
read
if
through
there's
it.
any.
I think I'm open right to
Change it
six
up.
two.
It's this one, 2023 to 24.
No.
Yeah, we did the
I have that.
Nothing related to off. I also
He's
have.
gonna show there, I think they should have, their representative should really see what the whole version here, right?
Sure, it's a
Otherwise-
copy of
Otherwise, they look
the,
at what we get them.
yes, sure.
I mean,
Do you want to?
Don't try to read my scribbles in there, I might confuse.
What do I do? Have the red line version. Agree.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yep, yes, I can get another copy.
Is there anything in here that talks though about special events? To me, this is a special event.
This is section.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna go grab,
No, it
I'm
just
gonna go
talks
grab
about
another copy so that you can take this back.
Job duties.
Special events.
Right.
Special event overtime. Chief, is there a difference, and this is me not being as intimately familiar with the contract, obviously, as all of you are, but when you think about sort of this, hey, we're going to do this, do you want to take advantage of it, right? Where you had sort of that back and forth versus mutual aid, where, correct me if I'm wrong, but mutual aid would generally be compelled?
I think
Is there a
they-
difference there?
Some of the question here and just the difference in the way we see this from the association has to do with whether this is considered special event overtime. So nobody doubts that the farmer's market on Broadway is a special event. We have, it's all staffed on overtime. We never staff it on any straight time. And we post it and the person, senior most qualified person to work the overtime works it. The difference with the RNC, in my view, with all respect to the association's views to the contrary, is that this was more like a SWAT call-out than it was a farmer's market. Because we were asked to provide specific specialty teams and not just any police officer that we could get for a period of like 4 days. So I look at it as almost like a 4-day SWAT call-out, because there's a mobile response team call-out, the Marine unit, motorcycle unit, which, if there's a SWAT call-out like that, if there's a SWAT call-out right now, I will have some officers who are at that call-out on overtime and some who aren't. And it isn't going to have anything to do with seniority, it's going to have to do with whose day off it is versus whose work day it is. And that's just random chance that gets you in whichever situation you're in.
Okay, and that's kind
To
of
me,
why.
that's how I look at this, is this was a specialty team activation that it happened to be on some people's days off, or more of them, or less of them. It was not like a Packer game, where we know the entire event is going to be an overtime assignment, and so we pick people by seniority to work those.
Okay, and that's kind of why I asked the question, because Alder Hinkfist had said, hey, this feels like a special event to me. Your position is it's more mutual aid.
Correct.
And Phil, I think, in your letter, at least, it was really asserting this is really more like a special event and should be treated accordingly.
Yes, and I just will add to that, that if you are on vacation and there's a SWAT deployment, you get deployed. But the vacation is not a distinguishing factor in whether or not you're deployed to a SWAT deployment or an MRT deployment. You're deployed on that assignment just as well while on vacation. So. it's fine.
Okay, thanks.
I'm going to be honest, 6.3.1 really says a lot of nothing. It's a whole
There's a lot
lot
of
of...
that.
Yeah.
That's why I'm trying to take it all
I
up.
don't want to take any credit for that, but...
Acquiring a new one.
If I could wave my wand.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, and there's also an out-of-city deployment section in there as well that doesn't provide any overtime, specifically for that. But I think, just to clarify one other item, the correlation between the SWAT call-out that the chief was using and this, is not whether you have PTO and you get called in. It's that it's not a seniority basis. It's not a, it's team. It's the team
Right,
deployment.
you don't call them the SWAT team by seniority.
Correct,
You call them the team.
right.
You call
And this
them-
is the same thing. We're talking mobile response team, Marine unit, and motorcycle team. So it's not a seniority-based call-in. It's a team-based deployment.
Okay, 'cause at first I was like, after reading this and initially hearing this, the chief asked the officers to cancel their time if they wanted to go. They canceled their time, and then they grieved it, but that's been reaffirmed by both parties, that the door was left open for a potential grievance down the road, so that's neither here nor there. What I don't find in 6.3.1 though is anything saying about off time is off time, no matter what. I know the department, I mean, this goes back a zillion years. We've deployed to northern Wisconsin for spearfishing duty. We've been deployed to other communities, and we've not been deployed to other communities because of the compensation. I know that that's happened in the past, that the department was made aware of what the compensation would be, and they weren't willing to have the taxpayers pick up the difference, and so we weren't deployed. It sounds like, again, though, that was left open to a potential grievance. I mean, it wasn't like the team went down there with the chief thinking, this is a done deal. Went down there with the chief thinking, there's a potential that there could be a grievance filed here. But again, 6.3.1 doesn't direct me one way or the other. And,
Chief,
yes,
can I comment on
Chief,
that?
Absolutely.
did you give him a promotion?
6.341 does distinguish that overtime is by seniority regardless of honor roll.
then I get it.
Okay, and then I will also, just to the respect of that, I will tell you that in the, we'd be willing to provide notice if you make a decision on their date, that there was communication between our team leaders and our members that in the event that they're not sending everybody, they'll be sent by seniority. In fact, if there was, depending on the size of the units we're going, it would be offered by seniority because it was an overtime assignment. And we have those correspondences from our commander of operation to our team supervisors. So our position is that, this is an assignment that we were tasked to go for. On or off day shouldn't have made a difference. And I think it's all in the document. I feel like I'm being redundant. so.
Are you saying those
Yeah.
communications are in this
I did
document?
not put them in the initial grievance, but we would, I mean, if you, we're being told a lot, argued a lot that this isn't an overtime assignment, there's no basis for seniority. We would respectfully disagree, and I think, disagree with that, and I think we will be able to show communications from our managers who traditionally have treated those things as such, and treated them with us as such in their preparations to attend.
Specifically to this event?
Yes,
Not to other events, but specifically to this event?
yes.
This is new information that
Well,
I have
it-
in trying to
I'm like,
get
what?
and resolve
Right.
this with the unions.
Yeah, and I didn't care
We
to
went from having
Yeah.
written arguments suffice to
Yeah, I'm not,
this.
I tried to argue with anything. If you don't want to consider that at all, that's fine.
Well,
Because it's not on the record, but
Well, I don't know that changes anything, just to be clear. I mean, I agree. We had no idea that was
Yeah.
the case, so I've been looking through a lot of communications to try to figure out what the communications were, which is what's described in that document. But again, ultimately, number one, nobody was told they couldn't take their their time off. They wanted to take the time off, they could take their time off, and then,
but if they did, they couldn't go.
correct.
Okay.
There was never a decision or never a process of determining who would go based on seniority. So to the extent that was discussed, it never happened. It's a theoretical application that didn't occur.
The
So-
chief is unaware that any communication was made to the bargaining unit that it would be by, or it could be by seniority. His communication or his thought process was, it's the team or it's not the team.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's what occurred, the team, there was no selection within the team by seniority.
Sure.
So whether that would have happened, could have happened, talked about happening, it's irrelevant, and that's not what happened,
Okay. All right.
from our perspective.
Okay.
So the communication came in, chief got it, and you said, do you guys want to do this? They're asking for specialty units. And then you got them to sign it, you said, well, you know what, we're only going to be able to pay you overtime, based on it won't be automatic and it won't be double time. So they knew going down, everybody knew going down there it was time and a half, or did we say it's okay if we're gonna file a grievance. Because I really think you get a lot of mileage going to these things and getting exposed with helps, with grants and other things.
Well, we knew for a long time in advance that Milwaukee was going to ask for help with the RNC. And that goes all the way back to the creation of the mobile response team, which was something that we knew we would need for the draft. We created that in advance of the RNC, knowing that it would be good experience for that team and that Milwaukee would want it. We made an agreement with the city of Milwaukee that they provided instructors for all our people. And everyone knew that this was coming and that this team and some others would be asked to go down there. And then at some point in the run-up and planning process for going down there, I became aware that almost everyone who was scheduled to go down there had put in for and been approved by their supervisors somehow for vacation leave. This was news to me because had I been told when we started this process that everyone wanted to be off on vacation at that time, I would have told the city of Milwaukee that we weren't available. And so now I had a problem that I had to unravel. I tried to work with the association, which has been my practice and will continue to be. And so we had some discussions about it. There was a disagreement between the leadership of the organization and the association about how all this worked. And then I had to make a decision because I had the city attorney from the city, or someone, high-ranking person in the city attorney's office in Milwaukee who told me over the telephone that they would not cover overtime expenses incurred as a result of people taking vacation to essentially turn what would have been straight time into overtime. That is what was represented to me by this person and by my own commander of investigations who had recently retired as an inspector with the Milwaukee Police Department and was deeply involved in the planning and finance process for the RNC. So to me, that felt like pretty good authority that I was taking on a $35,000 financial risk to the city, which I can't do, to subsidize police service in another city. And so we talked to the association, we acquainted them with this, and I respect that they still don't believe that Milwaukee wouldn't have paid, but I have to go with the information that I have. And meanwhile, the clock is ticking because somebody's got to either go down there and help them with this really important thing or tell the city of Milwaukee that we aren't going to be there. There's consequences of that, but I'm the one who has to deal with those. So I made the decision that, if you put in for and had approved vacation in advance of this, you can take your time off. This was never intended to be an overtime assignment. We knew there was some overtime that would come with it because of the hours and the fact that if you absolutely need a team down there on this specific set of days, some of them are going to be on their days off, and we're going to have to pay them overtime. Milwaukee understood that, and they were willing to pay for it. But I left it up to them and explained to them the problem this created for me because we had committed to help the city of Milwaukee with this. And it's not a very good look for the city of Green Bay to come along at the last minute and realize that we're not able to help. I think that our team, and I left it up to them and told them you can take your time off if you want to. I think to the great credit of our association and our team members, I think they went down there not because they wanted to make a lot of overtime, but because they realized that our friends needed help and they were going to go help them. And I do want to be really clear that I think this is not about the association trying to ratchet up as much overtime as it can. I think this is just a philosophical disagreement about the contract, but that's the decision that they made. Had they all said, no, we want to keep our vacation time, then we would have canceled our participation in the RNC.
Based on what you said, Chief, and I think being the chief of police, when something like this approaches, you should be able to have some type of leverage and be able to make decisions like that, when you have to, so.
All right, you guys want to discuss this amongst yourselves?
Well, I think we're going to have to come up with findings of fact and conclusion either way.
Right, well, we can go into deliberations, and then you guys can decide want to make a decision, or take it under advisement, and then make a decision at the next meeting. And have staff have
So
the
let's go into
opportunity
closed session.
to prepare findings of fact, but
Yeah, I would
We
say
can deliberate.
deliberate while it's fresh.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Motion to go in closed session?
Second.
Need someone to read the
Yeah,
verbiage?
she just handed it to me. I forgot, if you make one. The committee may convene in closed session pursuant to 19.85 IA Wisconsin Stats for the purpose of delivering concerning a case which was the subject of any judicial or quasi-judicial trial or hearing before that government body. The committee may therefore reconvene in open session pursuant to 19.852 Wisconsin Stats to report any actions taken during closed session and to consider all the matters on the agenda.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are in closed session. All right, here we go. I've got a motion to take this item under advisement.
I'm sorry, motion to
Go on.
go back into
I'm sorry,
open
so
first.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and here's my motion, to take this item under advisement and to issue a decision with findings and conclusion of law at the next regular meeting of the Personnel Committee.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. On to item informational, we have a report of routine personal actions, and our next meeting will be February 25th, 2025. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second. Are you?
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned. So guys, we'll have a